The blood-colored avatar picked up the skeleton general's crystal and immediately, a potent primordial energy surged into Zhou Wen's body like a boring drill that opened up a brand new path. After this force slowly disappeared, a notification popped up on the game screen. Absorb skeleton general crystal. Learned legendary primordial energy skill, penetrating pierce. Zhou Wen had already been prepared to suffer damage, but he was surprised that everything had happened rather smoothly. With a mortal stage body, one could only fuse with mortal primordial energy skill crystals under normal circumstances. If one forcefully fused a legendary primordial energy skill, their bodies would suffer an immense impact. The consequences ranged from damaged meridians to instant death. Zhou Wen had relied on his body being far stronger than the typical mortal stage, and with no fear of death in-game, this gave him the courage to absorb the skeleton general crystal. Everything went smoothly, and other than the pain of having a primordial energy passageway open up in him, there wasn't any damage dealt to him. Is this the case when played in-game, or is this an effect of Lost Immortal Sutra? Zhou Wen couldn't be sure of the reason, but ultimately, it was a boon for him. After glancing at the provided information in-game, Penetrating Pierce was a rank 1 legendary primordial energy skill. However, Penetrating Pierce was a primordial energy skill that required a spear-type weapon to deliver maximum force. Li Xuan, come out here. Zhou Wen was planning on switching dungeons to try his chances at killing the silver-winged flying ant in Ant Nest when he heard a woman's voice sound at the villa's entrance. At the same time, the doorbell kept ringing. Li Xuan probably wasn't home and he was the only one inside. Although Zhou Wen heard the doorbell, the visitor had come for Li Xuan. Since the latter wasn't home, he didn't have any intention of opening the door. He continued gaming while sitting on the sofa. Li Xuan, I know you're home. If you don't come on out, don't blame me. After pressing the doorbell for quite some time, the woman still refused to give up. Zhou Wen completely ignored her and pretended not to hear her shouts. The doorbell's ringing didn't disturb him in any way, so he continued gaming. Zhou Wen imagined that the woman would leave quickly, but to his surprise the woman stopped after yelling for a while. Then, 2 seconds later, there was a loud bang followed by 2 thuds. The door had been kicked open. The woman dashed into the villa and saw no one in the living room, so she headed straight upstairs. She appeared to be very familiar with the place, rushing straight for Li Xuan's room. Without knocking, she kicked the door open. Li Xuan, there's no hiding today. Seeing the room empty, the woman headed down the corridor and kicked open one room after another. When she reached the second room, she saw Zhou Wen gaming while leaning on the bedhead. Seeing a person, the woman was delighted. However, she immediately wore a look of disappointment when she realized that it wasn't Li Xuan. She glared at Zhou Wen and asked, "What's wrong with you? Didn't you hear me screaming?" "I did," Zhou Wen answered as he gamed, not even looking up at the woman. "Why didn't you answer when you heard me?" The woman said, peeved. "You were looking for Li Xuan, not me." "What should I say?" Zhou Wen answered in passing. The woman was instantly at a loss for a rejoinder. She glared at Zhou Wen fiercely and asked, "Where's Li Xuan?" "He's out." "I know that he's out. I'm asking you where he is." The woman didn't feel that there was any need to be polite in front of this fellow. "I've no idea," Zhou Wen answered very succinctly because he really had no idea. Just as the woman was about to say something, her phone rang. She picked up the call, said a few words, and prepared to turn to leave as though there was something pressing. But after taking a few steps, the woman seemed to think of something. She rushed back in front of Zhou Wen and yanked him up by the arm. "Follow me. Count it as helping me. At the very least, you can make up the numbers." "Who are you?" "I don't know you." Zhou Wen frowned slightly, wishing to free himself from the woman's grasp. "For you to stay here, you must be one of Li Xuan's trashy friends. How can you not even know his elder sister? You enjoy life with Li Xuan all thanks to him. Is there a problem helping his sister with something?" The woman seemed anxious, pulling Zhou Wen as she walked out. Zhou Wen was immediately rendered speechless. He wasn't a trashy friend as she described, but it was true that he was living at Li Xuan's place at his expense. "Let me go. I can walk on my own. What help do you need from me?" Zhou Wen thought about it and felt that if it wasn't anything serious, he could always help as payment for rent. The woman didn't loosen her grip upon hearing that. She continued speaking as she walked. "Don't worry. I'm only getting you to make up the numbers. I don't have any hopes of you doing anything. Just don't screw things up." Without even knowing the name of Li Xuan's sister, he was pulled out of the villa. A motorbike was parked at the villa's entrance. After throwing the helmet that hung on the handle to Zhou Wen, she got on and said, "Come on up." When he saw her tall figure in a pair of short boots, t-shirt, and jeans with black curly hair freely cascading down, he found a heroic vibe to her. She was very different from the women Zhou Wen had previously met. However, Zhou Wen didn't have any other thoughts about it. After putting on the helmet, he sat behind Li Xuan's sister. "Sit tight." As there was only one helmet, the woman naturally didn't have one to wear after giving it to Zhou Wen. When the engine roared to life, her curly hair began flailing in the wind, sweeping across Zhou Wen from time to time. On the streets of Luang, one could occasionally see experts riding all kinds of dimensional creatures. In contrast, this was rarely seen in Guide City. Vehicles and companion beasts followed their own paths, looking somewhat bizarre and harmonious. Companion beasts were taking on an increasingly important role in the league. Work that many humans and machines were unable to complete required the help of companion beasts. With powerful companion beasts, not only did it strengthen oneself, but it could also provide service to all of humanity. The woman drove extremely fast, swerving through traffic in a harrowing manner. However, she was surprisingly stable without showing any signs of emergency braking. Zhou Wen sat behind her with his hand still on his phone gaming. The journey didn't affect his ability to game. After riding for quite a while, Li Xuan's sister, Li Weiyang's impression of Zhou Wen improved after not feeling any hands placed around her waist. She had never had a good impression of Li Xuan's bad company. If she wasn't in a rush to get Zhou Wen to make up the numbers, she wouldn't have brought him along. She originally had imagined that Zhou Wen would hug her waist to take advantage of her while riding on the bike, but none of that happened. Even his body hadn't made any contact with her, as though he was deliberately keeping a distance. I never expected Li Xuan's friends to show some manners, Li Weiyang thought as she subconsciously looked back at Zhou Wen. It would have been fine if she hadn't looked back, but with that one look, all her favorable impression was gone. She originally imagined that Zhou Wen was being a gentleman, but when she looked back, she realized that Zhou Wen was still gaming on his phone, having the time of his life. From the way he was engrossed in it, it looked as though he wished to be in the game itself. From the looks of it, I was overthinking things. How could any of Li Xuan's friends be a gentleman? Li Weiyang thought to herself in a self-deprecating manner. Article 37 of 1597. Li Weiyang stopped inside a companion beast arena with Zhou Wen. A few girls who had been waiting outside rushed over and began breaking out into a cacophony. After listening for a while, Zhou Wen had a rough idea of what was happening. Li Weiyang and the few girls were students of Sunset College. They were his future seniors. These girls and another girl had entered a dimensional zone to slay dimensional creatures and were lucky enough to have a mortal companion egg drop. It was an ancient war steed companion egg. Furthermore, it had apparently dropped from a mutated ancient war steed. Mortal companion eggs were rare to begin with, so to have one drop was a really lucky event. Furthermore, it had dropped from a mutated ancient war steed. This meant that its stats would be extremely high, making it priceless. Companion beasts of the same level varied drastically in terms of stats. Mortal companion beasts' 4 main basic stats typically varied between 1 to 9. As for legendary companion beasts, their basic stats varied between 10 to 18. The importance of basic stats was obvious. The higher the stats, the more powerful their innate abilities were. After becoming a companion beast, the augmentation they provided their owners was boosted as well. Mutated ancient war steeds were top-notch when it came to strength and speed at the mortal stage, therefore, they definitely weren't inferior in companion beast form. To be able to drop such a companion egg was definitely a great thing to happen. However, the owner of the companion egg became the reason for the strife. As a team, they should have split the spoils of war equally, but the girl who had obtained the mutated ancient war steed companion egg claimed that she was the one responsible for killing the mutated ancient war steed and digging out the companion egg. Therefore, she should have sole possession of it. The other girls naturally disagreed. However, the girl, Su Mei, forcefully snatched the companion egg thanks to her boyfriend being quite a force to be reckoned with in school. She didn't even intend to provide any compensation. The girls were infuriated, and as one of them had a close relationship with Li Weiyang, she got her to stand up for them. After Li Weiyang had heard of the ins and outs, she originally intended to mediate the situation and get both parties to compromise. Su Mei could take the companion egg, but she needed to compensate the rest. But to her surprise, Su Mei wouldn't compromise at all thanks to her boyfriend's standing. The situation became worse as both sides decided to battle at the companion beast arena. The winner would then be able to take the mutated ancient war steed away. Su Mei's boyfriend was a senior student at Sunset College named Gao Yang. Li Weiyang also knew him and how strong he was. Therefore, she wanted Li Xuan here and have him bring more people to stand by them in the event Gao Yang went back on his word after losing. But to her dismay, she wasn't able to get Li Xuan on the phone. Unable to find him at home, all she could do was bring Zhou Wen along. Sis Weiyang, what do we do without Li Xuan being here? The girls wore a look of worry. Although Li Xuan had just been admitted into Sunset College, his infamy as a prodigal son of the Li family was well known in all of Luoang. The girls were no exception. Furthermore, they had often seen Li Xuan visiting Li Weiyang. What's there to be afraid of? I'm around. Li Weiyang said. But Su Mei's boyfriend, Gao Yang, is a 4th-year senior. I heard that he's a girl said, trembling. So what if he's a 4th year? He's still at the mortal stage. I have confidence in beating him and getting back the companion egg, Li Weiyang said. Zhou Wen found it odd. Since Li Weiyang was Li Xuan's sister, it meant that she was the eldest daughter of the Li family. Why wasn't she able to settle such a trivial matter to the point of having to settle it with a battle at the companion beast arena? He was automatically ignored by the girls because although he had a good build, he looked pale due to his loss of blood. He looked sickly and looked incapable of fighting. After entering the arena, they came to a ring. From afar, there was a group of young men and women. Not only were their numbers far greater than Li Weiyang's side, but they were also mostly stoutly men. Leading them was a tall and handsome man who was hugging a girl's waist by the side of the spectator stand. Upon seeing Li Weiyang walk over, he said with a laugh, Li Weiyang, you actually have the guts to come. Why not? Defeating you won't be difficult. I'll definitely get back the companion egg, Li Weiyang said. I've heard of your capability, but you are no way my match. Besides, I'm a fourth-year senior. It's really not nice bullying a junior like you, Gao Yang said with narrowed eyes. Gao Yang, what are you getting at? Li Weiyang had an ominous feeling. I never bully others, so I've deliberately found a second-year junior like the rest of you. As long as any one of you can defeat him, I'll return the companion egg on a golden plate. Of course, it needs to be a student at Sunset College. Outsiders don't count, Gao Yang said as he clapped his hands. On a seat on the spectator stand behind Gao Yang, a figure stood up. Gu Dian. When Li Weiyang and the other girls saw the figure, the color in their faces drained. The more timid one nearly burst into tears out of fear. Zhou Wen was also alarmed as he stood by the side and sized up the man. He had never seen a person look this fierce all his life. Ugly and fierce looking were two completely different concepts. This person didn't look ugly, but he exuded vibes like a devil that left one shuddering. Timid people would probably be frightened to death if they met him in the middle of the night. Zhou Wen never believed that looks alone could frighten someone to death. However, Gu Dian really left chills running through one's heart, making one not dare look at him straight. Gao Yang, how despicable of you. You actually got Gu Dian to represent you. How much of a sore loser are you? Li Weiyang said with an ugly expression. Although she was very confident in her strength, Gu Dian was no ordinary student. Gu Dian was nicknamed the devil at school. Not only was it because of his muscular body that stood more than 2 meters tall or his fierce, devilish looks, but that he had unfathomable strength. His abnormal strength made him nearly invincible among those at the mortal stage. Gu Dian was probably the first and only person to beat up a senior on the first day he was admitted into Sunset College. Although Li Weiyang had never fought Gu Dian, the latter had once pummeled a fourth-year senior whose strength almost equaled her with a few punches. Li Weiyang knew that her chances of victory against Gu Dian weren't high. Su Mei, who remained leaning on Gao Yang, mocked Li Weiyang, there's something wrong with what you say. Gao Yang got a second year because he just doesn't want to bully a junior like you. So how can you say something like that? Besides, didn't we already agree that the battle shouldn't involve any outsiders? Only students from our school can participate in the battle. Isn't Gu Dian a student of our Sunset College? If you think your strength is lacking, you are free to get help. We aren't stopping you. Article 38 of 1597. Chapter 38, Are we continuing? Light novel world. Li Weiyang was rendered speechless. It wasn't that there weren't any students that were stronger than Gu Dian in Sunset College. Those that ranked in the top 20 in the school's internal examinations were basically at the legendary stage. They were naturally stronger than Gu Dian. However, Li Weiyang didn't have any close ties with those seniors. They weren't necessarily going to provide their help without any reason if she recruited them. Furthermore, with the battle about to begin, it was too late. Gao Yang and Su Mei had never mentioned letting Gu Dian fight. Clearly, by letting him step forward now, it was to prevent Li Weiyang and company from having the time to find more reinforcements. Sis Weiyang, what do we do now? A girl looked at Li Weiyang worriedly. Li Weiyang clenched her teeth. At this juncture, I can only try my best. Sis Weiyang, perhaps we should just forget it. We don't want the companion egg. Gu Dian is so terrifying. It won't be good if he flares up and injures you, a girl said. Although the girls were somewhat unwilling, they persuaded her to relent. We can't let those two fuckers, Gao Yang and Su Mei, walk off with all the benefits. Li Weiyang just couldn't let it go seeing Gao Yang's and Su Mei's smug looks. After taking off her denim jacket and throwing it to a girl, Li Weiyang walked over to the ring with a heavy expression. The fighting ring of the Companion Beast Arena was actually meant for companion beasts. This was because combat had many indeterminable factors and was extremely dangerous. Therefore, the league didn't promote private battles. However, battles between companion beasts were greatly encouraged. Every city had numerous companion beast arenas, facilities that allowed human experts with companion beasts to use their companions for battle. Companion beast competitions had already become a huge industry in the league. Many humans with powerful companion beasts had become celebrities with an influence that far exceeded those entertainment celebrities of yesteryear. After all, having strong companions meant powerful strength for themselves. They were genuinely the best among humanity. Although Zhou Wen didn't pay too much attention to companion beast competitions, he also knew several companion beast celebrities due to the advertisements that were everywhere. For example, the #1 companion beast in the world was the epic stage Verbus Diablo Holy Angel that was known by all. The person who owned her had naturally become a top celebrity. Of course, this ranking of first place only included those who participated in companion beast competitions. There were definitely powerful companion beasts who had never participated. Zhou Wen heard that when legendary experts went on expeditions in the dimensional zones, they would mostly fight with their companion beasts. Unless necessary, no one wished to engage the battle in person. After all, they only had one life. The death of a companion beast wasn't the end, but it wasn't the same for humans. Furthermore, a person could control multiple companion beasts. This made them far stronger than fighting alone. Li Weiyang got into the fighting ring and stood opposite Gu Dian. Although Li Weiyang stood at 1.7 meters, making her rather tall among girls, she appeared petite in front of Gu Dian. Gu Dian, can you not intervene? Li Weiyang glared at Gu Dian and asked. No, Gu Dian answered very directly without any hesitation. Li Weiyang wasn't one to drag things out. Without a word, her long legs produced terrifying strength, appearing in front of Gu Dian in a few steps. She leapt up and exerted immense strength with a twist of her waist, throwing out a kick. It struck out like a bolt of lightning, hitting Gu Dian in the neck. Zhou Wen nodded secretly. Li Weiyang was indeed pretty good, far stronger than Shu Miantu. Furthermore, her kick was clearly a primordial energy skill. That strike alone was enough to snap a human-sized tree. However, Gu Dian didn't react despite being hit by such a kick, allowing Li Weiyang to cleave down at his neck with her long blade-like leg. Bam! There was a loud thud and everyone was alarmed. Gu Dian remained standing there, having received Li Weiyang's strike. Yet, his neck didn't even move. Although Gao Yang and Su Mei knew that Gu Dian was strong, they never expected him to be this terrifyingly strong. Faced with Li Weiyang's primordial energy skill kick, he had taken on the blow without dodging. His body hadn't even trembled once. Li Weiyang was equally shocked, but she didn't hesitate. Clenching her teeth, she turned her body and did a back kick, throwing out 4 kicks from her long but strong legs like a butterfly. Gu Dian stood there like a tower, taking Li Weiyang's 4 kicks without defending or dodging. From beginning to end, he stood there motionless without Li Weiyang injuring him at all. When Li Weiyang was about to kick the 5th time, Gu Dian finally moved. His hand shot out like lightning and grabbed her leg in midair. The next moment, Gu Dian held up Li Weiyang's leg and, like throwing a sandbag, smashed Li Weiyang onto the ground. With a loud thud, Li Weiyang's body bounced half a foot in the air after hitting the ring and then fell. Although the ring's surface was covered with a special rubber material that provided powerful dampening force, it still didn't stop Li Weiyang from spewing out a mouthful of blood. She didn't manage to get up immediately. Gu Dian, you really don't know how to go easy on girls. How can you treat such a beauty in this way? Su Mei said gloatingly. Gu Dian ignored her and asked Li Weiyang, who was struggling to get up, are we continuing? Yes. Why not? I haven't lost. Li Weiyang struggled to her feet, the corners of her mouth stained with blood. Her arm had been dislocated from the throw, but she continued speaking stubbornly. Sis Weiyang, stop it. We don't want the companion egg, a girl was on the brink of tears. However, Gu Dian didn't care. Just as Li Weiyang made it clear that she could continue, he dashed towards her like a tank. Grabbing her by the head, he pressed her down onto the ring. Bang! Li Weiyang's face hit the ground, and although the rubber surface provided some dampening, Gu Dian was just too strong. By exerting some force, he made her nose bridge and brow ridge crack. Blood began flowing everywhere. Are we continuing? Gu Dian looked at Li Weiyang and continued asking. Li Weiyang's face was covered with blood. She propped herself up with one hand on the ground, making several bids to exert strength to stand up, the look in her eyes tenacious. A timid girl was about to cry. Zhou Wen could tell that Li Weiyang would continue based on the look in her eyes. Why is this woman so stubborn? Zhou Wen frowned slightly. He hadn't had any intention of bothering with this matter, but he couldn't bring himself to watch Li Xuan's sister being brutally tortured, having received free board and lodging from him. Wait a moment, Zhou Wen said before Li Weiyang could even reply. Article 39 of 1597. Everyone was reeling with anxiety. Even Gao Yang and Su Mei were shocked. Although they had gotten Gu Dian, none of them expected him to be this ruthless. If Li Weiyang were to really suffer any serious injuries, it would only escalate the matter. Although she was an illegitimate daughter of the Li family and was never allowed inside the Li family's house, she ultimately had the Li family's blood coursing through her veins. It would be impossible for them to ignore it if something really happened to her. When Zhou Wen's voice sounded, it immediately provided a vent for everyone's tense feelings. Even Li Weiyang and Gu Dian looked over at him. Schoolmate, did you say that we can enter the ring as long as we are students of Sunset College? Zhou Wen asked Su Mei. That's right. What do you wish to say? Su Mei didn't know what Zhou Wen was getting at. I've just been admitted into Sunset College, but I haven't matriculated. Am I allowed to enter the ring? Zhou Wen asked. He imagined that if Su Mei said no, he could use this opportunity to pull Li Weiyang from the ring and return home early to game. Upon hearing that, Su Mei guffawed. So you are our Sunset College's junior. I can't tell that you are a man who knows how to cherish women. But as your senior, I'm giving you the chance to be the hero to rescue the damsel in distress. Go on up if you wish to, but don't blame me for not warning you if you get injured. University and high school aren't the same. Gao Yang and company jeered. Anyone that could be admitted into Sunset College was an elite. There were plenty that came first or second in their own cities. But so what? After stepping into the college, won't they all schooled? High school geniuses only lined the bottom at Sunset College. The ones who could really stand out were few and far between. Most ended up drowning in a sea of talent. It was especially so for the top students in small cities. Most of them gradually became mediocre once they arrived at Sunset College. It wasn't that they weren't outstanding, but there were just too many people who were more outstanding than them. Gu Dian happened to be one who stood out from his peers. For a rookie who hadn't even been matriculated to actually dare challenge Gu Dian because of Li Weiyang was, in their opinion, blinded and driven by lust. Gao Yang said with a cheeky smile, "Junior, you do resemble me from a few years ago. It's fine. Go on up if you want to. As your senior, I'll give you a chance to show off in front of the beauties." As he said that, he thought to himself, Gu Dian doesn't know how to hold back. Slash him. It's definitely not good to injure Li Weiyang. So it's good that she can be swapped. The girls on Li Weiyang's side looked at Zhou Wen worriedly. They were afraid that his sickly body would just die from a single punch from Gu Dian. "Senior Weiyang, let me," Zhou Wen said as he flipped himself into the ring. "Don't mess around. Go down." Li Weiyang had only pulled him here to add to the numbers. She had zero intention of getting him to fight. Furthermore, Gu Dian was just too strong and he didn't hold back. Based on Zhou Wen's sickly look, it was really possible that he could die from a single punch. As students, they might not be able to extricate themselves from his death, nor could Li Weiyang bear the responsibility. Zhou Wen couldn't be bothered to speak further. He just wished to settle this matter so that he could game in peace. Without waiting for Li Weiyang to speak again, he reached out and lifted Li Weiyang up. Li Weiyang's arm was dislocated and she was heavily injured. Unable to put up any resistance, she was lifted up by Zhou Wen. "What are you doing? Let me go." Li Weiyang was embarrassed and enraged. Zhou Wen ignored her and directly leapt out of the ring with her. After handing her to the girls, he returned to the ring. "We are students of the same school, not some archenemies. There's no need for us to fight to the death. No one can shoulder the responsibility if an accident happens. Why don't we change the criteria for victory?" Zhou Wen sized up Gu Dian and said. "How so?" Gu Dian spoke very succinctly. His voice didn't sound like a college student. It was low, gruff, and forceful, akin to a man in his 30s or 40s. Matched with his fierce looks, Zhou Wen really couldn't believe that he was a college sophomore if it wasn't for the Sunset College uniform he was wearing. "You let me punch you once. If you take less than 3 steps back, count me as the loser. Otherwise, I win. What do you think of my suggestion?" Zhou Wen had only said it randomly. Clearly, this disadvantaged Gu Dian. However, finding a strength measuring device was just too much of a waste of time. Therefore, Zhou Wen had given the suggestion. To everyone's surprise, Gu Dian said coldly without any thought, "Sure." Somewhat surprised, Zhou Wen said with a smile, "Then let's begin." Gao Yang curled his lips and said, "This rookie even thinks that he has taken the advantage. If he knows what primordial energy skill and primordial energy art Gu Dian cultivates in, he might be crying, much less laugh." "Brother Yang, what primordial energy skill and primordial energy art does Gu Dian cultivate?" Someone beside him was intrigued. "It's not my place to mention what primordial energy art he cultivates in. However, I'm sure all of you have heard his primordial energy skill before." Gao Yang deliberately acted mystifying. "So what primordial energy skill is it?" Su Mei couldn't hold back her curiosity as she wheedled and nudged Gao Yang's arm. Gao Yang chuckled. "Have you heard of dimensional creatures known as needle porcupines?" "Brother Yang, are you kidding me? We've obviously heard of needle porcupines. Although they are at the mortal stage, they are especially thorny. Not only are their carapace tough, but they are also covered with quills. Unless it's those legendary stage seniors, we have to circle around them," a male schoolmate said. Gu Dian's primordial energy skill came from a porcupine skill from a needle porcupine crystal. If he were to use it, not only will his body be as hard as steel, he will also have the ability to deal thorns sup 1-inch/sup damage, Gao Yang said. "No way. I heard that needle porcupines very rarely drop primordial energy skills, and even if it drops, with the powers of a needle porcupine, it will be a rank 1 or 2 primordial energy skill. How strong can it be?" Su Mei said in disbelief. "That's why people call Gu Dian terrifying. Not only did he have exceedingly good luck to have the porcupine skill drop, he even managed to cultivate a rank 1 porcupine skill all the way to rank 9. Furthermore, he didn't rely on primordial energy skill crystals to increase his rank. Isn't that sick or what?" Gao Yang paused before sneering. "When it comes to rank 9 porcupine skill, I've once seen a 4th year use a primordial energy skill strike Gu Dian only to have his palm riddled with countless bloody holes as though he had been stabbed by countless steel needles. His hand was almost crippled. It'll be fine if that rookie doesn't use any primordial energy skills, but if he does, he's in for a bad time." Su Mei was delighted when she heard that. She naturally didn't want Zhou Wen to win, much less hand over the mutated ancient war steed companion egg. Article 40 of 1597. "Sis Weiyang, is he okay?" the few girls asked worriedly as they helped Li Weiyang up. Li Weiyang obviously had no idea. However, since Zhou Wen was Li Xuan's friend and based on the kind of company the latter mixed with, the former was definitely not someone they could rely on. However, Li Weiyang couldn't say it out loud. All she could do was say something assuring. Since he dares to enter the ring, he should be somewhat capable. Instead of saying that to assure her companions, it was more to assure herself. Zhou Wen stood in front of Gu Dian. He wasn't short among men, but in front of Gu Dian, he was a head shorter. Gu Dian's body was extremely brawny. Not only was he tall, but his muscles were taut, exuding vibes that he had explosive strength within. There was nothing clumsy about him. During Gu Dian's battle with Li Weiyang, Zhou Wen had already noticed that the former cultivated in a high-level defensive type primordial energy skill. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to withstand the strike from a primordial energy skill, no matter how strong his physical body was. Gu Dian glared at Zhou Wen with his cold eyes like the devil. In a chilly manner, he said, "Come. Don't waste any more time. You have to be careful. This punch of mine has great strength," Zhou Wen warned him before slowly raising his fist. Su Mei was amused when she heard Zhou Wen. She said in mockery, "It's great if you have great strength. Gu Dian loves that. Use more of your strength, lest you disappoint him." Su Mei's words sounded like a joke, but they hid extreme wickedness. Gu Dian's porcupine skill possessed terrifying thorns damage, so the more strength Zhou Wen used, the greater the damage he would suffer. Although Gao Yang didn't say a word, he waited to watch the spectacle. Sunset College had many powerful students, but at the mortal stage, no one was Gu Dian's match. "If you aren't afraid of death, feel free to strike." Gu Dian's expression remained unperturbed, but it was already extremely terrifying. Zhou Wen didn't speak further as he threw out his right fist, producing immense strength with vigor divine fist. It caused his fist to swell up to a whole new size as though it was a hammer. Gu Dian's eyes narrowed as he stood firmly on the ground. An abnormal redness flushed through his body as though he was lit aflame. Knowing that this was a trait of porcupine skill, Gao Yang's smile became more obvious. When Li Weiyang saw the anomaly on Gu Dian's body, she immediately recalled something. Ignoring her injuries, she hurriedly yelled at Zhou Wen, "Don't throw out that punch. It's porcupine skill. It will rebound." Bang. Unfortunately, Zhou Wen's fist had struck Gu Dian's abdomen before she could finish her sentence. This was a spot Zhou Wen had deliberately chosen. It was an area that could resist relatively more impact, thus reducing the chances of death. When the hard as steel fist struck at firm muscles, there was a loud thud with the slightest hint of a metallic clash. Zhou Wen's and Gu Dian's eyes narrowed simultaneously as Gao Yang and Su Mei watched in disbelief. Gu Dian's gargantuan body curled slightly like a shrimp as his feet slid across the ice, stopping only after he retreated nearly 4 meters. Two nearly 4-meter-long black marks appeared on the rubber surface like skid marks left by a car's emergency braking. Li Weiyang stared at Zhou Wen with a blank look, finding his strength unbelievable. He had managed to send Gu Dian retreating about 4 meters despite the latter using porcupine skill. The other girls had already broken out into cheers. This wasn't just 3 steps, but 3 to 4 meters. It was probably as many as 8 steps. "Gao Yang, can I take your word?" Zhou Wen retracted his trembling fist and asked. He had sent Gu Dian retreating with 1 punch, but he wasn't too good either. His fist was trembling uncontrollably. Gao Yang didn't say a word as he looked at Gu Dian, who said coldly, "I've lost." Gao Yang nodded as he looked at Su Mei. "Give the companion egg to them." Su Mei immediately stood up and yelled, "What right do they have? The agreement was between them. I didn't agree that a loss would be counted if Gu Dian retreated 3 steps. It's completely unreasonable. Besides, Gu Dian's feet didn't even more. It can only be considered 1 step. Let him fight Gu Dian. If he can trounce Gu Dian, I'll count it as his win. Besides, he isn't a student of Sunset College yet." Smack. Before Su Mei could finish her drivel, Gao Yang slapped her in the face, leaving her stunned. "Do I need to say it a second time? A loss is a loss. I, Gao Yang, never go back on my word. Do you think that a companion egg of yours is more important than a promise of mine?" Gao Yang glared coldly at Su Mei. Su Mei was much aggrieved, but she didn't dare say another word. Unwillingly, she took out the companion egg from her bag and handed it to Gao Yang with gritted teeth. Then, she turned around in anger. Gao Yang ignored Su Mei and walked to Zhou Wen with the companion egg in hand. Throwing it to the latter, he stared at him. "What's your name?" Zhou Wen replied calmly. "Zhou Wen. I'll remember you. Since you will be a student of Sunset College in the future, we'll have plenty of time to spend together soon," Gao Yang said coldly before he turned around and left with the group of students. Gu Dian glanced at Zhou Wen but didn't say a word. He then left, following behind Gao Yang and company. "Zhou Wen, I sure couldn't tell that you had such strength when you look like such a pretty boy," Li Weiyang walked over and said as she sized him up. "Zhou Wen, are you really our junior? Are high schoolers these days so strong?" "Junior, you used a primordial energy skill, right? How impressive. What is its name?" The few girls circled around Zhou Wen as they asked him all kinds of questions. Their interest in him seemed to exceed the interest in the companion egg he had snatched back. "My victory was all thanks to luck. That devil-like fellow was truly terrifying. If we had really engaged in battle, it would be hard to tell who would have won." Zhou Wen handed the companion egg to Li Weiyang before raising his injured fist. There were dense, needle-like holes on the back of his hand which were beginning to ooze a tiny bit of blood. "Are you injured?" Li Weiyang was alarmed when she saw the wound on Zhou Wen. Without waiting for his reply, Li Weiyang handed the companion egg to the girls and got them to leave. Then she pulled Zhou Wen outside. "Let's go." You need to check on your injuries. There's no need. It's just some superficial wounds. It didn't injure my bones, Zhou Wen hurriedly said. You need to have a checkup, otherwise it will be a problem if it leaves some side effects. Li Weiyang dragged Zhou Wen to the medical room without listening to his protests. The companion beast arena had dedicated medical facilities. By the time they arrived, Zhou Wen's wounds had already healed and produced scabs that were fine after some treatment. Instead, Li Weiyang was the heavily injured one. She had dislocated her arm and the wound on her face needed treatment. It was Zhou Wen who had to run around to do all kinds of medical paperwork for her. Li Weiyang lay in bed, looking at Zhou Wen and his staid, gentle face as he ran around. With mixed feelings, she thought, I never expected Li Xuan to have such a friend. Article 41 of 1597.